Hi, I'm Steve Pleich, and welcome to this edition of Nonprofit Spotlight. Nonprofit Spotlight is a production of the Volunteer Advisory Committee here at Community Television. Every month we highlight nonprofit in our community, in our county, that's doing great work. And this month we're really happy to have Kirk Ance, who is the program director for LiftLine, and he's going to tell us all about LiftLine and that wonderful program that you have. Kirk, welcome. To the program. Just tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go to a little roll in and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about LiftLine.
Okay, I've worked for LiftLine for 20 years now.
Wow.
And I started out as a mechanic, and I was a fleet manager for 12 years, and for the last 6 years I've been the program director.
I'll be darned. Well, that's quite a story. You've been with him for a long period of time. Let's see, and we'll do a roll in here and give people just kind of a glimpse of the great work that the LiftLine does, and we'll come back and find out much more about us. Let's go to that now.
And the driver takes us safely to our door. And we've had a wonderful, relaxing day, and we're ready to rest. Community Bridges is the main thing that allows people that are growing older to be on their own. It becomes your family, and it's a friend in a way. It's made a whole difference in my life.
Arigato! 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 Arigato gozaimasu!
I usually step home. I'm already 87 when I come in. And this is a trip that help me open up, meet other people.
I love working for the elderly. I've been doing that since 1990. But with the elderly, I just love hearing their experience in life. They're always very thankful that we're there for them. They do let us know they're happy with the service. That's what makes me happy, helping them out.
Yes, I will.
And that's great. Just gives us a little kind of, as I say, a glimpse of the great work that LiftLine does. And Kirk and I were talking about some of those photos. That roll-in was taken at Elder Day, and we had an opportunity. This was a couple of months back, to have the folks from Elder Day here, and it was wonderful to talk about that program. So, Kirk, tell us a little bit about LiftLine and from your perspective as the program director.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little bit of history about LiftLine. LiftLine was started by the Santa Cruz Volunteer Center back in the late 70s, and it was a ride demand response transportation for elderly and disabled folks. And at some point they spun it off, and that's when Community Bridges took it in-house. And at the time it spun off, Community Bridges was known as Food and Nutrition Services. And from what I can understand, Community Bridges started operating it in 1982. And at that time we became the designated consolidated transportation service agencies for Santa Cruz County.
My. And now, how many vehicles do you have in the fleet? You were saying that in your introduction that you were a mechanic and then fleet manager. I was saying that must have been an awesome kind of responsibility. There are, I'm sure, quite a number of them.
That is correct. It's a big responsibility.
Yes, I would say.
Currently we have 20 vehicles in our fleet that we operate, and all of them are wheelchair accessible except for one vehicle.
Okay. Now, you were saying that when it originally started, it was a response request program, and now is that still the case?
Yeah, it was a demand response.
Demand response, there you go.
That is still the case. It's still demand response.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think in the roll-in it did say the number of people that you're serving every year. It's just incredible. How many people is that?
We provide approximately 80,000 rides every year.
Wow. Yeah. And part of the rides, again, an interesting part of the conversation that Kirk and I were having was that I did some intake coordination for the winter shelter that was completed last year and will happen again this year. And LiftLine was our transportation provider, and we would marshal the folks who were going to be staying in the shelters each night at a location out in the city. And then the LiftLine would come, and they were so professional, so courteous, and really were able to provide us the service that we really depended upon and needed, and found that they were excellent in the service they provided.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So the LiftLine, it has the 20 vehicles. What people may not know, and again, something we're musing about, is that Community Bridges itself is a countywide agency, and I may not have mentioned it, but of course Elder Day and LiftLine are programs within Community Bridges, the umbrella of many, many, many wonderful programs, and we hope to have more as we move along. But we're saying that one of the aspects of this is the senior part of it, that you're really serving seniors and the elder day, as we saw. How big a component is that of your LiftLine program? It's
the majority component.
Yeah.
There's about 85% of our clients are 60 years or older, with about 75% of them being over the age of 70. So our primary focus is low-income, elderly, and disabled folks of Santa Cruz County.
And demographically, Santa Cruz, the largest demographic in Santa Cruz age-wise is the 45 to 64s. And so there are people that are getting to the age, and a great number of them, of our 270,000 residents here in Santa Cruz, will be getting to the age when they would find the LiftLine services not only convenient for them, but necessary to get around. You're talking about in the roll-in, how elders, particularly if they can't be able to travel, to meet, to mingle, to socialize, then it really impacts their quality of life. And LiftLine really helps, make sure that they can travel, they can be connected with their community.
Yeah, and I think LiftLine's seen as a safety net in the county, and we really provide the transportation that helps those folks get to their medical appointment. That's our primary destinations. But we also provide the transportation to Elder Day, which in itself would kind of see that as a medical component, because the type of work that they do at Elder Day. And also Meals on Wheels, we provide a lot of transportation to Meals on Wheels. There's 4 dining sites in the county. And we provide transportation to all 4 of those, so that also is a quality of life there. You get a healthy meal. Might be the only opportunity for a person to get out of the house and actually have a nutritious meal. And I'd like to add that all of the transportation that LiftLine provides is free to the client.
Oh, that's wonderful. And one of the values of a program like this, an opportunity for the community to find more about LiftLine, is although it is well known and certainly visible, you see the LiftLine carriers everywhere. But for the community at large, how do they become participants? How do they get involved? What's the process of kind of either they'll see this program as it's rebroadcast many times here on community television, we hope, and they'll say, "My gosh, that's a great program. I need to be a little more mobile. How do I get involved?"
Yeah, well, that's a great question. As far as being a client, there's an application process. And there's a verification process for income as well, so it requires filling out an application. There are a few ways to get that application. One of the easiest ways is to get it on our website online, and it can be downloaded, filled out, and scanned and sent back to LiftLine. There's a link in the web page to send it back, or it can be mailed. There's the mailing address at our main office in Aptos, 236 Santa Cruz Avenue, or it could be hand delivered to our office in Aptos as well. And that's probably the best way to do it, is just to get it online, but also you can call for information.
And I was mentioning really how professional and courteous the drivers were during the winter shelter process. What are the employment opportunities for LiftLine drivers?
So there's a lot of employment opportunity for LiftLine drivers at this time. We are short. It's been challenging to hire drivers. Yes, it is true. We've been searching and advertising quite a bit. So we're about 50% down on our drivers.
Is that right?
We currently have 8 full-time. We're looking for 12 full-time. So there's great opportunities for drivers.
Right.
And we also hire drivers and are willing to train them to get their commercial license.
Right.
So we'll spend time with them, get them trained and certified.
Right.
So it's a good entry program as well. Of course, if someone already has a commercial license, then they kind of get put into a bigger vehicle and trained right away.
And is it a B-class license you need, or a C-class? Which one is it you need for the drive an airporter, for instance, or the kinds of LiftLine vehicles you have?
So it's very interesting now because the state of California is going through some changes. It was a Class B until just recently. Now it's called a Class C commercial. So that allows an individual to, once they get certified, drive a vehicle up to 26,001 pounds. So it's used to be a Class B, but now it's a Class C commercial.
So the Class C, the ones you and I have, I'm sure they have in our wallets. But so this is just an additional requirement, additional component of that particular licensure to be able to drive commercially.
Yeah, and that's correct. And then there's also a passenger endorsement that's required with that. So.
Yeah. And also, I was mentioning to you that I was one of the main proponents of the passage of Measure D here, the transportation tax that went through this last election cycle, which passed, as we were talking about, by a very thin supermajority. It needed, just as any tax measure needs to be, by 2/3 majority. And so that has provided additional monies, thankfully.
Correct. Yes.
And how does that impact LiftLine?
Impacts LiftLine in many great ways. Immediately starting July 1st, we've extended our services. So we've basically provide more transportation during our operation hours, which are 8 to 4. Usually the transportation is scheduled from, say, 8:30 to 3:30, depending on where an individual lives in the county. So that's an expansion of service there. We've also expanded to 7 days a week, so we provide transportation on Saturdays and Sundays as well. And the types of transportation that an individual might be able to get, where primarily a lot of the funding we get was for medical appointments, this will expand it to dentist, where before it just covered dental surgeries, but now they'll be able to go to the dentist, and folks will be able to also go to the pharmacy and pick up their prescriptions. So this is kind of this is also part of the expansion. So that's very good news for us, the passing of Measure D, and particularly the folks that will benefit from that, the low-income senior and elderly population. So
the LiftLine services primarily are for transporting people to kind of the necessities of life. You're not talking about, we're taking an excursion, or you're going to the park, although that would be great, wonderful to be able to do that. But mostly for the necessities of shopping or medical and perhaps dental now and things of that nature.
Dental for sure. Shopping is not part of that yet, but LiftLine has currently conducted a survey. We also look at a lot of the unmet needs through the AAA or RTC particularly, or AMBAG, and we look at all the unmet paratransit needs, because LiftLine is a paratransit transportation company, and we're always looking. And the survey really showed that grocery shopping is actually kind of high on the list, that folks really want an opportunity. So we're going to be entertaining that idea in the future and looking at all the unmet needs as well. And it's very possible that Measure D could make that possible, give that opportunity.
Actually, that's wonderful. And on an administrative level, you're talking about the RTC, it's a Regional Transportation Commission, for people who don't know, and AMBAG, which is Association of Municipal Governments, as people might not know. Do you have much interaction with them when you're trying to go to persuade them to expand a program or approve a program, or whatever the process is you might be engaged in?
We have a lot of interaction with the Santa Cruz Regional Transportation Commission, and LiftLine sits on the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Task Force, where a lot of these issues are discussed, as well as there are other members that represent the CTSA. There we have a member from Meals on Wheels, the director there, Lisa Berkowitz, who also sits on the committee. So it's a big opportunity for us to talk about the different needs, and the RTC themselves, they put together continually working on the unmet needs list. So we do have discussions about where priorities are.
Yeah, and that's a conversation that really should be had. That's kind of their mandate, I think. You know, regional transportation, and certainly LiftLine, an element of that. I was going to ask you, in terms of the Meals on Wheels, although that's not your program necessarily, how much of your carrier capacity is taken up by doing the Meals on Wheels, as opposed to, say, just transporting folks from elder day or seniors around to their various necessities of life appointments?
It's kind of a small amount of the time is dedicated to that every day that we operate, but doing the 4 sites, it could take up to an hour and a half to do the pickups and drop-offs to one site, and then we're doing the returns. So we probably dedicate, there's a lot of time dedicated towards Elder Day as well, because there's a lot more clients usually that we pick up for the Elder Day program, 69 a day usually, which takes several buses. But as far as the Meals on Wheels, there's a dining site that's in Live Oak, and there's one in Watsonville, and there's one at Loudon Nelson, and then there's one in we call it the mountain area around Felton.
Not to be forgotten, I noticed in the roll-in that, of course, you have some of the vehicles that are wheelchair accessible.
Yes.
And now, hasten again to add that during the winter shelter, we had several people who needed that kind of a service, and so the drivers were very courteous and professional. Do you have special training to be able to work those lifts and make sure that, because it's arguably a more hazardous, entrance and exit to the vehicle than just kind of stepping up and going into the vehicle itself. Yeah,
each driver is trained how to operate the lift and how to properly secure the wheelchair securement devices, so that we do have training on that. And each style of vehicle, if there's a minivan has a ramp to where a small bus to a large bus will have an actual lift. So there's training on each different piece of equipment so they know how to properly use. And I know you have different types of vehicles because we saw a lot of them during the program. What's the largest capacity for you? Well, largest capacity is a 25-passenger bus, which is a large bus. It's all ambulatory, and it's the only ambulatory vehicle that we have. But the reason why we can do that capacity, there's not a lift on it. If you put a lift on it, you're going to probably lose about 6 to 8 ambulatory seats. And we did find that to be the case during the winter shelter, because when you would have somebody who needed a wheelchair accessibility, and then if they had some baggage stuff, he has to put their chair in back, that's the things they were carrying on the chair in back, and so they kind of reduced the number of people that we could take back and forth, but certainly a great service. And I was also telling you that a friend of mine had driven the 25-seater when the winter shelter was at the Armory, and he really enjoyed it. He enjoyed the experience. That's a lot of people, to get on the bus, get off the bus, and they were doing at that time, I guess, 4 trips up and back, because the Army had a capacity of 100. But so that would be up to 100, between 75 and 100
But you certainly are transporting a lot of people during the year, and you're talking about, the thoughts of kind of expanding the basic services you have. Basic services are wonderful, and people have come to expect that from LiftLine. But you think that there is some possibility with Measure D funds, and I know there's also some funds that ultimately will come from the state, SB 2 or whatever it was. There's some additional transportation money. I'm not certain how much of that is going into what would technically be called paracruise programs. But nevertheless, you envision even more expansion You know, I mean, it's a wonderful program now, and the number of people that you're serving is phenomenal, but there's always a look into the future, particularly as an administrator.
Yeah, I think I'm looking into the future. We do see that we will be expanding. We're just kind of taking small steps, starting out with Measure D funds to kind of connect and put everything together. But as we build on that, we will be adding more services in the future. We can't exactly say how much at this time.
Right.
It really kind of depends at this time, the demand and the types of transportation we're providing, if it's grocery shopping or another type. So it depends on how many clients you can add through those types of services. But you know, it wouldn't be hard to see another 4 drivers added maybe 5 years down the road.
That would be wonderful.
But
And of course, now you have a staff. You're the program director, and you have a staff that works with you. And what's a typical day like, you know, for yourself and your staff in making sure that the LiftLine is up and running and goes where it's supposed to go and does what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, a typical day for staff would start at 7:30, where we have a dispatcher who comes in and they'll look at all of the routes and make sure that everything's still in order and oversee as the drivers come in and at 8 o'clock, and then they start logging into their equipment, which is a mobile data computer in the vehicle, and make sure all of that is running correctly and make sure everybody gets off to a good start and a timely start. And as things progress, there could be additions, there could be cancellations, and they're making all of those adjustments and sending that information out to the drivers over the mobile data computers.
So that's the kind of thing that you're responsible to kind of keep track of on a real-time basis during any particular day.
Yeah, and that's what the dispatcher will do, and we'll usually have 2 dispatchers at one time, because we've got a lot of calls coming in. We have 2-way radios with the drivers calling in, so the people calling to schedule rides or book rides for next day, or we also have a same-day service. So that's kind of a typical day for a dispatcher. My day is a little bit different, kind of.
Well, tell us about your day. I'm curious to know what your day is.
Yeah, it fluctuates a lot, and depending on what time of year it is. You know, is it grant time? Is it report time?
Okay.
So I could be working on grants. I could be working on reports, or just overseeing the daily operations.
So part of your responsibility is development as well. You're involved with the actual grant, writing of the grant, the research.
Yeah, I take part in the grant writing as well, putting information and projects together, providing numbers and so forth like that.
That's wonderful. I've worked in a number of different nonprofits in Santa Cruz over the years, and actually we did some development for several of them myself. But it's usually kind of the program director who is kind of the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty. You know, we got to go out and find some money, and we got to know, you know, how to frame our need and how we're going to meet that need, and all the various, you know, components of a successful grant application. And that's a skill. You know, I've always said that it's kind of as much art as science, but nevertheless it is a skill. How did you acquire your ability to kind of successfully, I'm gathering, submit grants?
Yeah, well, it's a team effort, so we have a lot of administrative staff that also works on the grants and supports us. Various workshops, how to apply for the grant, what kind of information is required. Caltrans has been very good, and they've actually sent me models of grants that were very successful, and kind of use that as a guide as well. And it really is a teamwork, just not only at LiftLine, but at Community Bridges, with all of us kind of working together for a common goal to get things done.
Is there a specific or a main source of grants, or something that you specifically focus on in terms of any state agency or the state itself?
There are Caltrans that oversees the 5310, which is the FTA funding, the Federal Transit Administration funds that are for low-income, elderly, and disabled folks. That's a grant that we apply for every time that it comes out, which it varies. Sometimes it's every year, sometimes it's
Grants
every
being on
3 years.
cycles, and
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
different cycles. And they had different versions of 5310 was for equipment and 5317 was for operations. Now they've combined them, so we're doing two, instead of doing 2 grants, we're kind of doing one that's combined. But we will always look at those, and we've been very successful in getting a lot of our equipment.
Yeah.
The majority of our vehicles come through the 5310 grant, the FTA funds. Every year we have a claim with the Regional Transportation Commission for funding for the TDA funds, which is Transportation Development Act funds.
Oh, wonderful, okay.
And that's based on a formula, but we're putting our claim together and our plan and what types of transportation, and probably be good too to talk about the different types of transportation that we offer in LiftLine. But we do that every year, so those are 2 types of grants. We've been applying for the Monterey Peninsula Foundation grant.
Oh, wonderful.
They
Very
funded
grateful.
us, yes, which has really been a tremendous help. That helps with some of our same-day transportation, our out-of-county transportation, and providing veteran transportation as well. It's helped fund that, where we provide veteran transportation to Monterey VA Clinic. So I think that kind of segues into maybe the different types of programs, transportation programs that LiftLine operates, and I'd kind of like to go over those a little bit.
Well, we're really running short of time. Unfortunately, it's been such a great conversation that we're down to our last minute or two. But if you could quickly go through it, we'd love to hear about it.
Okay. Well, we provide medical transportation as one of the programs, same-day transportation we offer. If someone comes in and then wants a ride that same day, they can call in. If we have availability, we'll go ahead and schedule that. We do the Elder Day, we do the Meals on Wheels. Out of county, we do North County as well as the South County. And the winter shelter program,
Absolutely.
as we've done in the past.
Shout out to that. Yeah, appreciate it.
Kind of getting in a crunch here, so I'm trying to think quickly. There's probably something I missed, but
Well, people can find out about it on the website, certainly.
Yes,
They can go and look at
correct,
that. Kirk, it's been wonderful to have you here. The
Well, thank you,
LiftLine
Steve.
is
It's been
such a
great.
terrific program, as I mentioned. It's touched me personally, and as it touches many, many people of our 270,000 residents in Santa Cruz, it's an essential service. So we thank you so much for your work, and thanks for being here and telling our audience about it and participating in Nonprofit Spotlight. We really have been delighted to have you here, and thanks for your great work.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure to talk about LiftLine and the services.
Been very informative for me, as it always is. So thank you again, Kirk. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to this month's Nonprofit Spotlight. I've been Steve Pleich, and next month we'll be highlighting another wonderful nonprofit doing great work in the community, like our very own LiftLine here. So until next time, I'm Steve Pleich. See you later. That was great.
Thank you.